starting again. We'll start this over. For those of you I haven't met, I'm Gabby Hebert. I am today representing the Arizona Association for Environmental Education as chair of the Environmental Literacy Working Group. I'm also the Director of Education here at the Phoenix Zoo. I'm very excited for all of you to join us. We have people in Phoenix, Tucson, Lakeside, and Yuma that are all participating in the conversations today. Before I get into any of the details, I also wanted to take a moment to thank the folks that are part of the Environmental Literacy Working Group that have helped create this event today and lots of conversations before leading up to this. So I don't embarrass myself and accidentally miss someone. I'm just going to ask, if you're at one of the sites, please please identify yourself as somebody as part of the working group. So raise your hand so people know who you are. So thank you, all of you, for helping make this happen today. So why are we here? That's a great question, right? We are very excited to reinvigorate conversations about developing an environmental literacy plan for the state of Arizona. We're going to be building off of work that has been done previously, which you'll hear about this morning. And we really consider this step one in what will probably be a long process of gathering a lot of input from a lot of stakeholders. And so today what we really want to do is get input from all of you to figure out, how do we start this process? Who do we need to involve in the conversation that's not here? What things do we need to consider as part of the process? Who wants to be, how involved do individuals want to be? So we're going to be asking all those questions today in the second part of our morning while we do our small discussion groups. To set up the stage, we have some speakers today, and you can see on the screen the agenda for the morning. So we're going to hear about the history of environmental education in Arizona and the work that has previously been done working towards an environmental literacy plan. And then we're also going to hear about if you don't know what an environmental literacy plan, we're going to answer that for you and talk a little bit about why we need one. And then we have Nancy Herron from Texas, who is going to be joining us live via satellite. Not really, but she will be live via Hangouts. And she's going to be sharing the story of her experience in Texas developing an environmental literacy plan. Actually, they call theirs a framework. So we can hear what their experience is like. And then we have a little bit of an update from some advocacy needs that we have for environmental education that's been directing from the North American Association for Environmental Education. And then we have a little bit of an inspiration moment, and then we'll be moving into our afternoon, or our second half discussions. So I'm going to stop blabbing, and I'm going to introduce our first speaker so we can get going with our morning. Just give me a second while I pull up my notes for her bio. All right. So I'm introducing Lisa Herman. She has worked in the field of science education as a classroom teacher, informal science educator, developer of science programming and curriculum, and as a science education advocate. Through her work with the National Program for Excellence in Environmental Education, she led early development of the Arizona Environmental Literacy Framework and the State Environmental Educator Certification Program, and was part of the writing team for the Guidelines for Early Childhood Environmental Education. She recently served as the designated representative for informal educators on the state leadership team for the adoption of the next generation science standards through the Arizona State Department of Education. And Lisa is here today representing the Arizona Center for Nature Conservation and our new facility at South Mountain Environmental Education Center with the City of Phoenix. And I am going to close down this because she doesn't have a PowerPoint, so you're going to get to just see her talk.
Okay. Now I should have brought this PowerPoint. You're not sharing your screen.
Oh, I wasn't sharing a screen anyway. Okay, so this is the most exciting YouTube broadcast you've ever seen. All right. So, Lisa, I will give it to you.
Hi, all. Some of you are familiar faces, and some of what I'm going to be talking about you're very familiar with because you've been engaged in this. I want to start out by mentioning something I think we all know, but I want to recognize Arizona is a special place. We have a vast array of flora and fauna through our diverse types of biomes that we have through the state. We're a state that's known for its sunsets. We have some unique sustainability issues that come up, like nighttime urban heat island effect. We also have our distinctive brand of Arizona politics, especially when it comes to education. And I think it's just important to recognize this. But also, I'm a native Arizonan, and I've seen Arizona figure out some really creative ways to rise up against challenges. And some of you, again, have been part of some of those approaches. We see some really great cross-sector collaborations. We meet some of these challenges head-on and go about things in ways, approaches that are novel when you look across the country. And I think that's a great place something great to be a part of. So in 1992, we did have some really, truly heroic educators in the state who were able to produce what was called the Arizona Comprehensive Plan for Environmental Education. Not only did they produce this plan, they were able to win over legislative support for a mandate for environmental education in Arizona. It was the first statewide plan, and while we were a model and being modeled by other states across this country, while the national organization, the North American Association for Environmental Education, looked upon us for it and modeled us for its national project for excellence in environmental education, while we were leading the way, we were also, unfortunately, drawing some negative scrutiny across the country. And in 1993, the legislation that we'd worked so hard for here in the state was repealed. I actually was not one of those heroic educators. I was actually in another area, another part of the country at that time. I returned to my home state in 2003. And I found environmental education, but it was almost as if it had to go underground. It really was trying to operate under the radar, under the political radar. But meanwhile, there were states that were demonstrating what we know, that environmental education is a way of approaching education across disciplines, providing opportunities for experiential learning, project-based learning, relevance, getting kids out in nature. All those things that we want to see in quality environmental education, the world was coming to recognize. So around 2008, the folks in Washington were looking at how do we revise what was known as No Child Left Behind, the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA. The structure, the legislation that helps funnel money from federal to state for its education programming. And they continued to recognize that things that came out of Capitol Hill, things that were coming out, drafts that were coming out from the White House, were recognizing well-rounded student opportunities or ways to help create that well-rounded student. And included in that, over and over again, was environmental literacy. So the North American Association for Environmental Education recognized this opportunity for states to really put details into what they saw as their state's visions for environmental education, creating environmental literacy plans for their states. Arizona participated in helping to advocate. In fact, I was able to walk the halls of Capitol Hill, knocking on doors. It's actually an activity I recommend for everyone that wants to participate in the democracy of this country. Advocating for specific criteria to be included in those plans for state environmental literacy. And then we had to do work within our states to demonstrate how we were going to meet those criteria. So here in Arizona, 2009 to 2011, we held mini meetings, and again, many of you were part of those meetings. We convened stakeholders from all across the state. I did a lot of traveling that year, or those couple of years. I got to hear everybody's phenomenal ideas, and we started to blend together what we could do in our state that was specific to Arizona, how the national criteria would translate here in this state for our culture, for our diverse cultures, for our students, and for our capacity. And we did have some really interesting, great components come out of those talks. We were able to produce something called the Arizona Framework for Environmental Concepts and Themes. That was actually adopted by the State Department of Education, and some of the county education service agencies also utilized it for how they translated some things for grants involving environmental education. The Science Foundation of Arizona looked to that framework when it was funding EE-based programming. So having that as a tool was really useful. We worked with Arizona State University in doing a survey, producing a report on sustainable practices in schools across the state. We also were able to assess the environmental literacy of middle school students at 19 schools across the state as part of a national research project on student environmental literacy. We did also run into some walls. We learned that putting together a database of environmental education resources also inherently requires that you take on responsibility for continuously updating and vetting those resources. So a little bit more of a challenge than what we'd originally envisioned. We learned that there's some struggles. I think we knew, but we reinforced the concept that there's struggles in our formal education world in Arizona. So integrating non-formal with formal has some challenges. One of the things, though, that I think I'm proudest of is we recognized that all the hardworking environmental educators in the state needed to be recognized as professionals. We are professional environmental educators, and in order to claim that, we produced the Arizona certification for environmental educators. And that is something I'm so proud to see roll out as an online model, which makes it very accessible now. We launched it just in January of this year, again, due to some hard work of some amazing people in this field. And I want to give kudos for that program because, again, Arizona is rising to the top of something special. We are getting national recognition or attention for that certification program because it truly is something beyond what we've seen happen in other states. So what I request is, as you move forward in this process, we're just keeping in mind and honoring, honestly, the history of environmental education in this state, recognizing that there's been a lot of work done and the work that you continue to do will probably run into some challenges. But we do all know what is right for the future of Arizona. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm going to open up the microphones for the other sites really quick to see if we have any questions. Are there any questions? Any questions here in Phoenix?
Yeah, environmental certification. Tell me about it.
The question is, what more information about the environmental certification?
Like the URL for the online certification process.
I can do that.
Okay.
Yeah, I can do that.
So to answer the question in general for everybody, if you go to arizonaee.org, you can find out information about the environmental education certification program. We're in the midst of a pilot right now with, I believe, 24 participants that are going through it with us, and so we're really excited that it's live, and so we'll be launching to the broader public, I believe, early January of next year after we finish this pilot. So very exciting stuff. Anything else?
In the history, I'm wondering, her name was Tina. She would have been in Arizona, in Phoenix as the environmental education coordinator, maybe, in the Department of Education in 94, maybe 92, I don't know. But we did actually have a person when that legislation went through. Tina, she was Kerry Baldwin's wife. But,
Gabby, do you hear that?
A little bit of it.
We have a question as to maybe where a woman named Tina, who was really involved in the process of passing that legislation
1992.
around 1992, if we have any more connections with her.
Hold on.
All I can say is that, again, I wasn't at that time, and I heard about the story. I can look at my notes and see what some of the names were. But Lacey Weezer, who's now at the Department of Ed, is actually a student for another.
So what Lisa just said is that she's not familiar with Tina specifically, but she can look through her notes to see if she can get the contact information. But Lacey Weezer from the Department of Education is a big advocate, so she's someone that's been in conversation with us leading up to this summit as well. So if you happen to remember the last name of that person, you can send it to us. That would be great. And so we've got a couple questions here in Phoenix too.
I don't think it was Kerry Baldwin's wife.
It's Kerry Baldwin's wife, if that helps. So maybe it's Tina Baldwin?
No, Tana was his first wife, and she was editor for Ale.
Thank you, Gabby.
The only reason I'm giggling is because we're walking over each other. So, okay, thank you. Go ahead, Rich. Oh, Tana Thornburg? Okay, so we have the official name, we think. Yeah, go for it. Okay, so the question that we had here in Phoenix was a great question. I didn't actually describe who the Arizona Association for Environmental Education is, for those of you who may not be familiar with us. So we are a state organization. We are the state affiliate of the North American Association for Environmental Education. And our charter, our mission is to really network environmental educators across the state, forward the best practices, and for the professionalism of environmental education. So we have currently, we're working on the environmental literacy plan. We have the certification, as we mentioned, and we're also working on some other professional development opportunities. And I have some, for people that are here in Phoenix, I have some brochures in the back on the snack table. But if you go to arizonaee.org, which was the website where you RSVP'd for today, you can find more information about the projects that we've got going on and getting involved with the organization. So thank you for asking that. I forgot to do that. So, okay, I'm going to go ahead and move on to our next speaker, which is Eric Proctor. I'm going to introduce him, and then we're going to pull up his presentation. So Eric is the Wildlife Education Coordinator for Arizona Game and Fish Department, where he's been for the last 11 years. Formerly, he was a middle school science teacher and has also worked in non-formal education at the Phoenix Zoo, Challenger Space Center, and the Arizona Sonoran Desert Museum. And I really didn't need to read my notes there, because I actually know all that now. All right. All right, so I will now turn it over to Eric.
Thank you, Gabby, and thank you for everyone that came here today and is listening in our satellite locations. So I'm going to try to provide a little bit of an overview as soon as I get my notes situated here. Hang on. Too much technology on this thing up here. I'm just going to move your phone, Gabby. All right. So I'm going to give you a little bit of a background about environmental literacy plans, what they are. Here's kind of what I'm going to cover briefly over the next, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes or so. What do we mean by environmental literacy? And then some of the things that I've been able to pull out for essential elements of an ELP based on some of the work that we've done with other states and looking at the states that have already gone this route, some of the things that might be of value to start thinking about to include in an ELP. So currently there is an international movement to get youth connected to the outdoors and build environmental literacy in the U.S. But why is there so much focus on this call to action? Why do we even need to develop an ELP? That's okay. Children today are increasingly disconnected from nature. I don't think I'm saying anything new that people in this room and in our other locations don't know. But just in case there's some people that need a little bit more of the background, I did want to go very quickly over some of the stats that we've had. Some of these are a little bit dated, but that's okay. First, kids are far more connected to electronics than they are to nature, according to the EPA. Americans spend around 90% of their time indoors. A 2009 Nielsen study found that children spend over 4 hours a day in front of the television, and then they spend another 1 hour playing video games. In addition, a 2009 Pew study found that they send about 1,500 texts per month. So they are clearly utilizing their electronics far more than they're spending their time outdoors. Quite possibly for today's children, kids will never spend time climbing a tree, fording a stream, collecting pine cones, all the stuff that many of us did when we were little. This is a problem. As Stephen Jay Gould once said, human beings are unlikely to protect what we do not love, and that we cannot love what we do not know. If youth are not connecting with the natural world, how will they develop a love for it, and what does this mean for conservation efforts? An ELP is part of the solution. Yeah, great picture, huh? It serves as a guide to help connect adults, children, and families to nature. By connecting people to nature, we help to promote overall wellness while building that love of the natural world that is so necessary for stewardship and conservation. Also, we know that Americans want environmental education. A recent study showed that the vast majority of adults believe that EE should be taught in schools, and also that it should be a focus in the workplace. Why? Because they understand that it improves science learning, provides opportunities for community service, and encourages a greater respect for things, not just the places that they're learning about, but they also gain a respect for people. Adults aren't alone. The United States found that youth that were engaged, one of their #1 concerns was the environment. I'm sure that most of you are aware of the importance of STEM and all of the energy that is devoted to increasingly STEM teaching and learning. STEM fields are seeing some of the largest career growth, yet U.S. students are not graduating with those skills. Environmental education, guided by a comprehensive environmental literacy plan, is an ideal way to inspire students' interest in STEM knowledge and seek careers in math and science. Also, it shows that science does not always take place in the classroom, but rather through field investigations. Lisa touched on a little bit of this. We're going to give a little bit of an update of what's happening nationally. The national push started with an individual bill called No Child Left Inside. After a few years of bouncing around, portions of this bill were added to the latest version of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act. This new version, which passed just recently, called Every Student Succeeds, makes EE and environmental literacy both eligible for potential funding. The North American Association for Environmental Education is closely monitoring implementation of the law to better understand how the funding will be made available to states. It is important to note that the law's prioritization of STEM activities, including hands-on learning and field-based or service learning, may provide additional opportunities for environmental education. As far as ELPs go, we are a little bit behind. Lisa talked about how much we've been the leader, and we've kind of dropped back a little bit. As of 2014, 17 states had completed and adopted an ELP. Most of those were already being implemented. Only 4 states had not even begun. Up until recently, Arizona was one of those. Not now. Lastly, there are a multitude of people who are working on the most salient environmental issues today, whether they be conservation, deforestation, water pollution, sustainability, you name it, there's people working on it. Who are these people, though? And you know all this. They're teachers, they're scientists, they're business people, they're government employees, they're environmental education and conservation organizations, they're farmers and ranchers, they're hunters and anglers, and they're youth. Basically, they're everybody that we tried to bring to the table today. All of the stakeholders that we want to be here to be discussing what should an environmental literacy framework look like in Arizona. So how do we connect all these people? State ELPs provide that connection. It requires organizations and people to work together to formulate and implement a comprehensive guide to connecting people to the outdoors and promoting environmental literacy. That's why we brought you here today. So what do we mean by environmental literacy? National Environmental Education Association defined it as when a state's citizens possess the knowledge, intellectual skills, attitudes, experiences, and motivation to make and act upon responsible environmental decisions as individuals and as members of their community. So basically, people have the skills and the knowledge to act responsibly, make responsible environmental decisions. There are at least 3 levels of environmental learning that take place. I'm going to talk about each of these very quickly. So an environmental awareness is a very basic familiarity of environmental concepts. It is an important first step in the process. You can't become literate without being aware. Yet it is not enough. Research shows that awareness alone does not lead to stewardship. The next step is to build action. In this step, people use their limited knowledge and awareness to engage in personal conduct and behavior that contributes to environmental improvements. They might recycle or conserve water or some other similar act. Research has shown that people at this level can be as much as 50% more likely to engage in stewardship. That leads us to the last level. Environmentally literate citizens understand the natural world and its processes in a much more in-depth way. They are able to make and act upon responsible environmental decisions. For most people, this needs to be achieved through hands-on interaction with the information. So what are the elements of an ELP? During the discussion today, you will have the opportunity to work in small groups to determine what elements should be included in ours. Here are some things that I think are important to consider, things that we've learned when we've talked to other states. And I welcome you to discuss these all in more detail when you get into your groups. So number 1, we need to identify the specific content standards that we want all people to know and understand. We also need to know how and where those will be taught. Some considerations. How much should take place outdoors? How important is access to public lands for that outdoor activity? What opportunities will students have to engage in local service projects? How will we connect students with relevant environmental careers? 2, we need to evaluate the current high school graduation requirements. We're not going to change those. I don't think we can change those, so we need to look at what's there and how can we leverage them to improve environmental literacy. And number 3, understanding that much of the work to implement the ELP will not take place by the people in this room. We need to make sure that those people who are implementing it have the right training, resources, and support to do it effectively. We need to know what professional development training is going to look like. If it's already available, how do we get people to it? Number 4, how will we know we are successful? How will we know we are moving towards success? We need to have clear and effective ways to evaluate and measure our progress. 5, we need to identify the funding that will be necessary for the long-term sustainability of the ELP. If new funds are necessary, we need to determine where those funds will come from. 6, no child can be left behind. We need to make sure that all students have access to the programs and resources. This includes special needs students, as well as those found in largely underserved communities that may not have easy or immediate access to the natural world. 7, beyond the formal classroom, we should make sure that families have opportunities to interact with nature. If possible, those programs should be connected with what's happening in the classroom. 8, we need to tell our story. We should have a media campaign that helps increase the public's awareness of the importance of getting outdoors, that empowers citizens to seek out opportunities to get outdoors, and also that decreases the fears associated with getting outdoors. And finally, we need to empower citizens to get involved in Arizona's natural resources. We need to tell them how they can do it and give them those opportunities. The goals, strategies, and visions outlined in a state ELP are bold changes for many state agencies, schools, and communities, children and families. For education, they are changes that, if implemented, will mark a pivotal moment in time for education, environmental stewardship, and the ability for youth to connect with nature in ways that promote STEM academics, environmental literacy, and mental, emotional, and physical health throughout their lives. Together, we can accomplish these collective goals. Thank you. What do you need? Oh, we need to know if there's questions. Oh, yeah, I'll unmute them. Well, we got a question here first, and then I'll get to the regional staff. Yes? Can I send your PowerPoint? Absolutely. We can find a way to make it available through this ELP website, or somehow we'll do that. Absolutely. Yeah, it is being recorded. But you might want it if he's going to be our boots on the ground, reaching out to people, he could take the PowerPoint. Absolutely. So we did have it. We'll make the PowerPoint. Obviously, this is being recorded, and it'll be available to everybody, but we are reaching out to do this. What I'm going to do is I'm going to unmute the regions one at a time so we don't have utter chaos. So Megan, we're going to start with you guys and see if I'm going to unmute you right now, and if you guys have any questions.
You guys have any questions?
So.
I don't think we have any questions at this time. Thank you.
Okay. I'm going to go ahead and mute you again, and then Tammy, we're going to go ahead and open you up and see if there's any questions in your area.
Nope, I'm good.
All right. That's good. That was easy. Do we have any more questions here? Or do we have any from Tucson? Okay. This is very exciting that we have access. We're able to do this in like 4 different locations, and we're just trying to figure out all the technology. Do we have any other questions from Phoenix here?
One thing I'm just going to point out too is at the point, the 2008, 2009, in that period when our American Association for Environmental Education was first directing states to start visioning for state environmental literacy plans. They did produce also a document at that point, and I think Aaron already hit on all the elements that were in that plan, but I know we have some historical pages that are interested in what they were part of. So yeah, I think Aaron hit on all of it.
It's likely, because I got this from Kelly, and she probably pulled from there. So. Yes, Nick.
One of the biggest issues that I see trying to accomplish a lot of those things, I love doing anything outside the students, myself, and all the people that I know, and trying to do things off campus. The field trip aspect of it seems to be something that's not as readily supported as it should be. There's a lot of districts because of lack of funds for substitutes, lack of funds for all these other things. Do you think it also could be important in the future for us to do things like wildlife habitats, gardens, pollinator gardens, things like that directly on school campuses? And if so, how can we go about doing so?
Okay, so we had, I don't know if everybody heard that, but we basically had a question about the concerns with the lack of opportunities today and recent trend towards schools moving away from field trips for a variety of different reasons. And is it something to consider to have, to put energy and effort and funding towards wildlife habitats and those types of things on school grounds for those schools that can't get out there? And I think for my answer would certainly be, I think that that's definitely something we need to consider, and when we sit in our discussion groups, that's something that we need to look at. Obviously, some of those programs are going to exist. It's a matter of making them available, or do they fit the needs that need to, or do those programs need to be modified? Do we need to look for funding for additional? All those types of things need to be considered, but it's definitely a thought that I think we want to capture when we're in these discussion groups later.
One more thing I just want to contribute, and unfortunately I'm going to have to speak. That's another program going on, not in the city, but along these lines, one of the things that was really frustrating for me, watching some programming roll out, and like I said, we did a survey here in Arizona of sustainable practices in schools. Also, there was the Green Schools programming that came out. There was things that came out of our Department of Environmental Quality. There was protocol or a recognized federal recognition for what was called Green Ribbon Schools. None of those, well, I shouldn't say, green schools had a little bit of it, but they didn't require that there be environmental education curriculum, and they didn't specifically point to you have outdoor learning space. To me, that was huge, and I didn't understand what was being overlooked. What we tried to recommend in Arizona, at least in our white paper, was that that had to be a part of what makes a sustainable school. That has to be part of what makes.
So just if you didn't hear, Lisa just commented, and I'll try to summarize a little bit. She was talking about how there was a large initiative for sustainable schools with some of the green ribbon schools and some of those programs, and unfortunately, many of them did not have a requirement placed into the sustainability of these schools to actually include environmental education or some sort of outdoor learning. And so that was something that I addressed the earlier comment to talk about how do we get these kids outdoors if they're not doing field trips and those pieces. Do we have any other comments locally, regionally here in Phoenix?
Those programs you mentioned, the green schools and everything, do those still exist?
Green Ribbon Schools is a national program. The State Department of Ed has had limited, I have to say, limited exposure to our Arizona public schools. From what I understand, they've recognized some schools in Arizona, but they're processed.
Yeah. We actually have people that work with those that are on our committee and that. So we're aware of them. We're working on the ways to again, we're talking about the green urban schools and whether they're still functioning in Arizona and those types of things. And we do, they're out there and we have them on the committee. We're just working on, like all environmental education things, they have their issue. I mean, we all have issues with what it looks like in the classroom. So.
But part of that too that would definitely need to be addressed within this, and again something you can discuss in your small groups, is also that there really is not necessarily a nice hub to make people aware of the resources that are in existence already, as well as where the needs are that still need to create some of the resources, but it's just really kind of helping people get connected with those, and that would be something that we would hope to accomplish with this framework as well.
Yeah, so definitely, yeah, finding ways to connect people to all these resources that already exist and identifying where the gaps are and the holes. Okay, so that was good from I think that came from Megan. Megan's group asking if we were connected with the Association for Experiential Education, and we are putting them on our list right now because we're not sure if they were on our original list. Thank you for that. Okay, Gabby, are we ready to? I hope you don't expect me to do it.
I'm going to write that note down.
All right.
Okay, I am going to. Oh. Give me 1 sec. I've got a comment coming in from Tucson.
Oh.
So the question from Tucson is whether there was some confusion over whether there's a state law for environmental education, because Lisa mentioned that in her talk that there was a state requirement and then that was repealed. And what Eric's been referring to in his presentation is the federal legislation. So if there was any confusion about that, there is no current state requirement in Arizona for environmental education. It's the funding is coming from the federal level. So that was a great question. Okay, I am going to try going into your settings and seeing if you need to change your audio, your microphone.
Does that work?
Yay, we hear you.
Yay! All right, sorry.
No worries. We're glad to have you.
Thank you so much. Well, sorry about that. I thought, okay, I can improve. Well, anyway, glad to be here. Sorry about the false start.
That's all right. So, Nancy, I'm going to go ahead and introduce you with the bio that you sent me, and then I'll let you talk after that.
Okay, great.
Great. So this is Nancy Herron. She is the Outreach and Education Director with the Wildlife Department, with over 21 years of experience. Hold on a second, I'm going to mute her for a second. 21 years of experience in nature and outdoor recreation education. She is the recipient of multiple awards in leadership and education innovation. She has been a director of several nonprofits, a teacher, a reporter, and columnist. Nancy is co-founder of the Texas Children in Nature, a consortium of regional collaboratives with over 400 organizations who share the vision of reconnecting Texans with nature. Each region reflects its own character and needs, while guided by TCIN's strategic plan, the development of which Nancy led and coordinated. Shortly after its release, Nancy was asked to direct a similar effort to create Texas's environmental literacy plan, a plan that former First Lady Laura Bush then launched. So Nancy's joining us today to talk about the process that she went through in developing that environmental literacy plan for Texas. She's going to share us the steps that they took, some of the lessons that they learned, and sage words for us to carry forward with. And Nancy, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mute us here in Phoenix so that we're not interrupting with the feed, and let you go ahead.
Okie doke. Are we ready to, I'm ready, right? Thumbs up? Okay. Thank you. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with you guys this morning, and I have been very impressed with the prep that you all are doing. So kudos to you guys. So I am happy to talk a little bit about how this all got started in Texas, and then some of the tenets that we followed to make this happen. And Gabby asked me to first start with the genesis of the plan, and we'd been meaning to do an environmental literacy plan in Texas for a long time. There were some early attempts, and it seemed to have gotten bogged down in some details and players and process. We were able to have a very successful process for creating a strategic plan for Texas children in nature. And the process and the plan was well accepted across the state. So that was one foundation that helped us a lot. And then the second was the No Child Left Inside proposed legislation that said if you want funding, you're going to need to have a plan. One of the members of our Texas Association for Environmental Education, and as I understand it, I'm talking to our sister, that kind of sister organization in Arizona, she approached us about following the same process to actually get this environmental literacy plan created. So let me talk a little bit about that process. We first made sure that we had clarity on why we actually needed a plan, especially since we had a few false starts earlier. So we really were clear on the need for aligning with the strategic plan. What role does education play in this connection with nature? And again, because that was so well accepted, we decided to build on that, and also the potential funding. And by having that clarity of a succinct message, we could approach partners more effectively. We made sure that there was a champion organization or infrastructure to carry this forward. I'll get into a little more detail on that in a second, but I think that's really critical, that there is something that will keep it going, and something to actually make sure that it's framed around. I'm sorry, it's kind of funny. I'm looking at an empty room, so I'm assuming you guys are still out there. Anyway. Oh, there we go. Woo! Oh, hi, there are people there. Okay, thanks, I feel better. Okay, So anyway, the strategic plan for children in nature, that's kind of an interesting genesis there. What we did is we were able to get legislators, a bipartisan group of legislators, to ask our state agency, and I'm with the Texas Parks and Wildlife, which is like your Fish and Game in Arizona, to ask us and the Department of Education, the agriculture department, and the Department of State Health Services to work together to put together this strategic plan. What that brought us was not only direction from the legislature, but those organizations, those agencies had a lot of credibility within the state of Texas. And I think that was helpful to us. It also was a genesis outside of just those who were primarily involved in the work. So it had credibility, and it had import beyond practitioners, and I think there was something to be said for that. I think that helped us a little bit. We identified stakeholders who would have interest in this plan or concern about this plan. So we tried to figure out who the movers and shakers were, and the organizational movers and shakers, who were the influencers in our state, and made sure that they would be part of this plan. So it wouldn't be just our interest group creating a plan for us, and it would have been way too exclusive with that. We put a lot of thought ahead of time before we ever gathered them as to what their needs would be. So why would this be a win-win for them, and what concerns they might have. And then we thought about common ground. What is the common ground that would pull us all together? That was a lesson we learned from the Children in Nature Network. It was absolutely mind-blowing to me how effective Children in Nature on a national and now international level is. And that's because they went right to the visceral universalities. If some of you guys are interpreters, but what is fundamental that nobody's going to argue with? And that was key, that we had common ground, regardless of political leanings, economic leanings, geographic, all these other pieces. And we needed to do that for this literacy plan as well. We also ran the traps of who could possibly torpedo the plan and address those concerns. So again, trying to think ahead of what makes this a win-win and what makes this something that will play. Like you, we looked at other plans around the state, and some were, my goodness, I think if you looked at Maryland, they have this incredible plan with all kinds of detail and funding and this and that. We didn't anticipate we'd ever have that, so we decided to go with something that was a little broader, at a higher level, more of a framework. We gathered the stakeholders then, and we spent some time identifying our mission and our vision. And that vision and mission we did with a lot of care, and that was to be sure that we had the right key words. And I'm talking very openly and frankly with you guys because I think you have a very similar political and independent spirit in Arizona as we do in Texas. And we anticipated some concerns, and I think that was why it wasn't flying previously. So I'll share some of our thinking with you. So if you've looked at the plan, and I think you guys have seen this, right, or at least the text of it. Yeah, okay, I see some nods out there. We use the word natural resources, and we didn't leave environmental behind. It's the natural resources / environmental literacy plan. It's definitely a nod to inclusiveness. But there were definitely some concerns with the word environmental as being kind of a trigger, that there might be some fear, and we heard this, fear that we would be inciting protests or had some political leanings. And so we didn't want that to be something that would torpedo the plan. We had liaisons within, or people within our stakeholder group and our writing group that were from some of those organizations that would have protested to those words. So they could be representatives within their own communities to assure them that this was a safe and win-win type plan for them as well. This also went through the governor's office, that the governor did not want the word environmental, or at least his staffers didn't. So we were able to get natural resources / environmental. We use the words all Texans in our mission. I guess I could do this really quick because it's only like a phrase. I'll read this. So our vision is all Texans value Texas's natural resources, know the principles of natural resources stewardship, and live sustainably. We use the word all Texans to be sure that we were inclusive of all ages and all of our practitioners. So we'd include formal and non-formal and community. It also allowed us to be mindful of best practices, because we know that this is not going to take with anybody in the future if they don't have community support, friends, they don't enjoy this, and even in informal and recreational settings, that it's a lifelong process. We use words like in the mission, let's see, is that where we put it? No, it's still in the vision. All Texans value Texas natural resources. We use the word value, and a lot of times in education you wouldn't do that, but what we knew in that common ground is that Texans love the land. They love their land. And so we use the word value to emphasize that, something that they could connect with. Principles of natural resources stewardship, that was to emphasize the educational integrity. Again, we're not going to try and do, like I said, incite rabble-rousing, but that this would be very objective and have a lot of educational integrity. We use the word, then the mission, to provide a framework for ongoing statewide efforts that foster natural resource environmental literacy as a cornerstone of education, recreation, and lifelong learning. We use the word framework and kept it high level because Texas really appreciates and endorses local control. So having a top-down specific plan would never fly. I'm guessing that may be the case in Arizona, but I'm not sure how your educational setup is or how you're set up educationally. And then one last thing I'd point you to as well is in the text of the plan on the second page, we just kind of explain the core of who we are as Texans live in the sustenance, history, and culture built around our natural world. And that was, again, appealing to that Texas pride, and that it is key to who we are. So it is not a special interest. Environmental education is not a special interest. Just as children in nature is fundamental to our growth and our health and our well-being, so is this natural resources environmental literacy. So we tried to build on that message that it is beyond a special interest. We articulated why. We kept it simple to allow that flexibility, local control. It wasn't dependent on getting special funding because we didn't anticipate that was going to happen. So we tried not to put anything in the plan that would, again, jeopardize its ability to be implemented at either a high or a status quo, I shouldn't say status quo, but at different levels. Nothing was going to keep it from actually becoming. It could grow, it would have a lot of potential, but it wouldn't be stalemated because there wasn't special funding with it. We were sure to co-brand the plan with the Texas Children in Nature plan, and this is the other plan we have, and it's available online. again, it was becoming a respected organization, a respected plan. We had done the exact same thing where we had influencers in the development of the plan. We had the agencies involved as well, which gave it credibility. So all those little strategies we used. And we certainly listed the writers and the organizations and the endorsers on the plan. And then lastly, in terms of the plan itself, we launched it with a small conference or summit, and we made sure that we had a champion who would be the spokesperson for the launch. Because it was literacy, because it was environmental, we were able to get Laura Bush. Again, you might think about, if you like that idea, you might think about who in Arizona would have that kind of charisma with your groups, as well as representing potentially a group that might be against the plan. So in Texas, potentially we might have had some groups, the landowners or conservatives that might have been concerned about something that was like an environmental literacy plan. And so Laura Bush is very much within, and the Bushes are very much within that community. And to have her endorse this, and not only endorse it, but launch it was a major coup for us. To say, hey, you don't have to be worried about this. It gets to the root of who we are as Texans and how we love the land. And this is a part of teaching our next generation about loving the land. So it all worked together. So you have to build your own story for Arizona, but that was some of our thinking. And in terms of implementation, I'd say we get probably a C on that. And what has happened is that we did set it up with a parent organization, and that was our affiliate of NAAEE. But we were going through some changes in leadership, so there was definitely interest and good intent. But with the changes in leadership, it didn't get carried through as much, but we've got some new leaders for the organization now, and I'm very encouraged that all is not lost, that they are very interested in taking this and carrying it forward in a stronger way. I talked to the new president the other day, and he said they're going to use this plan as the organization's strategic plan, and they're going to do a new focus on their mission to support this as they go forward. And I guess one other thing, if you feel like we were, I don't know, maybe a little too cautious by using the words natural resource or that sort of thing, what was interesting to me is that during her speech, Laura Bush kept referring to the plan as the environmental literacy plan. so that was an okay thing, because there were concerns by some of the folks in the group that we were watering down or apologizing for the plan, and that didn't really turn out to be. So that's kind of the overview in kind of a nutshell. Gabby, does that get you what you were hoping for? If you have any questions.
That's great, Nancy. So I think we'll open it up to see if we've got questions. And sorry, the camera just fell. Wow, this is a fun summit. So let's start with Yuma. Let's see, Tammy, we got you on the line. Do you have any questions for Nancy?
I do not.
Okay. All right, and we'll, somebody do you have the YouTube up? Still?
I've been monitoring.
Okay, so we're looking for questions from Tucson. They're in a little bit of a delay with the YouTube feed, so they're not, takes them a little bit longer to hear from us. So, okay, White Mountains, you're open now. Do you have any questions for Nancy?
We were wondering if you had any problems with the word sustainability in your plan.
Yes, yes, we did. Very astute of you. Yeah, there was there was a lot of controversy about that. We decided we needed to put it in, but defining that was difficult for people. What did it mean? And we did define words like natural literacy, environmental stewardship, those kinds of things right up front because of the connotations. And I did not anticipate, personally, that sustainability would have had such excitement around it, but it did. We did let it go through and talked about how sustainability was essential in all realms, including in business and economics and the like. Eventually went through, but yes, it was a trigger word.
Thank you.
Okay, we do have a question from Tucson.
Yeah, there. No, I want to know who is the person that runs the plan in Texas and how do they get paid?
Nancy, did you hear that?
I did hear that. I like all the smiles and giggles. So what happened with Texas, I'm going to back up with a little background here. The Texas Children and Nature Strategic Plan, Texas Parks and Wildlife really took this on and said, we are going to be the champions for this. And I hired a contractor. I found some funding, and pretty sustainable funding to hire a contractor with for the Children and Nature Plan. But I didn't feel that as the Parks and Wildlife Agency it was appropriate for us to be the pushers of the environmental literacy plan. So the intent was to have the affiliate, the NAAEE affiliate in Texas, do that. And that's where and why it's been a little slow to start. There has not been funding for that. If you could make that happen, and I think other organizations have, that's fabulous. The other thing is that if you have champions within that can stay closely tied with the organizations who have most at stake in the plan, I think that's doable. But we do not have someone who does that. We even talked about trying to have our Children in Nature person be partially funded to push the literacy plan, and I think that probably would keep it going further. So I think even part-time could do that, or if someone's organization felt like this is so important to them that they would carve out some time for it. I think that it would have done better in Texas.
Sure.
Nancy, we have another one from Tucson. Says, did any special interest groups try to take over or dominate the plan, and if so, which ones?
And if so, what? I didn't catch the last part.
Did any special interest groups try to take over and dominate the plan, and if so, which ones? If you're willing to divulge that information.
Oh. No, we did not have that problem. We really didn't. We facilitated a very wide group of people. We were very respectful of each other. Those were the ground rules. And we had writing teams. I think everybody felt like they had their opportunities to talk, and we worked it out. But I think it takes a good, strong facilitation to make that happen. And I feel like we did do that. So, no, we didn't have any problem like that. We tried to anticipate their concerns ahead of time so nobody felt railroaded.
Anything from Phoenix? Go ahead.
Could you tell us what role the universities in Texas played in your creating that?
So the question is if there was any role that the universities in Texas played.
Yeah, they did. They were part of our writing teams. We also vetted the plan with universities. We did that with the Children in Nature, and then also with the Natural Resources Plan. Vetted it with some of the universities who were not on the writing team. But yeah, they were part of the writing team. We asked them to help us with different pieces. Keep in mind that our particular plan is, I thought, very high level, probably even more than I anticipated. Yeah, there's place for, we absolutely did include them.
Jeff, did you have one?
Yeah, it's not a question, but more of a comment.
Do you want to come up here and say it so I don't have to translate for you? We have someone coming to the microphone.
Okay.
Nancy, thank you very much for sharing your plan with us. As I listen to it, I'm really excited about this because I think there are a lot of parallels between Texas and Arizona in our plan. And what I really like about your plan, aside from number one being the shortest plan of all the ones that we looked at, it's only 16 pages long, I really like the fact that it is very high level and it doesn't get so much into the detail where it's dictating what everybody does and how they have to do it and all these standards and things like that. Because there's already a lot of great programs and education programs out there. It's just putting this vision and mission, as you mentioned, to it. The other thing that I really like in your plan is the fact that it comes from a national perspective, No Child Left Inside, and how that sets that framework nationally, and also for funding coming into the state. And then also I really like the fact that you have used the North American Association for Environmental Education as the gold standard for where we go, and that's where we get our professional status from, is from that organization. So anyway, those are just really kudos. I really like the plan and appreciate you being able to share that with us because I think it will set the energy here in Arizona. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. And that was definitely our intent. Thanks so much.
And Nancy, we had a question in from Tucson asking just for clarification. So you said that you're working right now to try to get the implementation moving forward, but it's not very active at the moment. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it's becoming so. There's new energy, new leadership in our organization, and that's the affiliate of NAAEE. And he's been shopping this around. He's with the San Antonio River Water. Let's see, San Antonio Water. What's that stand for? Services. Anyway, he's wonderful. He's very strategic-minded, and he just is really, again, taking that. He's got the spark, and he's going to use this as the strategic plan for the organization, and as they're shopping it around, it seems to be speaking to everybody. And I'm glad that the fellow who's just up there mentioned NAAEE, and yes, thank you for saying that, because I don't know that I mentioned that the standards in there were critical in here as well.
Go ahead, Eric.
Further clarify, I think what Tucson's trying to get at as well is, what will that implementation look like? Like, how is it going to be used? I think that they're trying to figure that piece out.
Oh, okay.
What is that going to look like?
So the question is, do you have any thoughts on what the implementation actually might look like?
I think that it's a couple of things. One will be, and there will be times maybe as you get farther down in, or if you want to talk to some of those folks, be happy to get you connected with them. But if you look at the objectives, we've got some of those actions and strategies in there. I think what it's going to be is a greater focus on mission rather than membership within the organization, and more support for the organizations that are part of that. So how do you fit in the plan? Do you reference the plan? Do you see this as a guiding document? And again, that kind of mirrors what we do with Texas Children in Nature, that we see this as our common ground. And I think that was the biggest challenge for us initially, and I think it's been our biggest success with Children in Nature. Oh, I'm sorry, you can probably tell I'm from home here. Anyway, so by having this common language, I think we'll be emphasizing common language, looking at the plan and using that as the guiding document. And then one piece that will be very important is acknowledging all the good work that's already happening that is consistent with the plan. So if you think of it as the inventory or the directory or the, I don't want to say endorsement, but really the acknowledgement, so that we know not only are we not dead in the water, we're not lost in this, we're doing good work, but it's part of something bigger. And we're part of something bigger that has a strong strategic approach. You see, not only does my work help, but my work helps bridge into somebody else's work so that we are pathways and gateways. And you hear that, as a matter of fact, there's a lot, you hear that a lot, you should be hearing that a lot in Arizona from your Fish and Game department. Kelly and Eric are very instrumental in the national work on gateways and pathways to understanding your natural world and being involved in your natural world. And that applies across the board in here as well. So the implementation has to be that inclusiveness of the work, the acknowledgement of the work that's being done around your state, and tying it, if everybody helps build the plan, you can tie it to the plan and say, yes, we are together on this.
Any other questions here in Phoenix? Did you have one? Thinking.
The word climate change.
Whether it's there. Is climate change referenced at all in the document?
I'm trying to remember. This was a while back. I know we talked about it, but we did not get into a lot of detail on specifics in here, and I'm trying to remember. I'd have to look. I'm sorry that I can't say right off the top whether we put it in there or not. Sustainability was certainly a nod to that, but I don't recall that we mentioned it specifically. And keep in mind, this was written several years ago, and I think it very much bears updating. And when I was talking to TAEE, Texas Association for Environmental Education, very much said that it may be time to modify some of these. And as they find their new partners in implementing this plan, is saying if they don't see themselves in this plan needs to be updated.
That's a really good point. Eric, was there another question from Tucson? Okay. Any other questions from any of our sites?
I'm actually from the Arizona Council for Social Studies, and I'm also affiliated with the Arizona Geographic Alliance. So in the Texas plan, Texas has a very strong geographic alliance and
yes,
strong geographic connections to National Geographic education. So was that any type of major stakeholder in yours? With your, were they part of your writing team or people that you sought feedback?
Are you hearing that, Nancy?
I am. I hate to say I'm trying to remember. This is definitely moving forward, and you're absolutely right about not only the geographic alignment, but social studies is all over this realm. I know that they were part of the review, and I'm trying to remember if they were part of the writing team as I'm looking through this. They should be. If they weren't, they should have been, but I would highly recommend doing that with yours, because if we didn't, it was an oversight in here.
We've got somebody at the table today, so that's good.
Yeah, no, that's really good. And if we've said that so many times, we tend to. It's easy to turn to science, but honestly, social studies. When you look at the teaching standards, it's everywhere there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I think, unless we've got any other questions from the other sites, I think we're about ready to let you go and enjoy the rest of your Saturday. Just pause for one moment to see if any other questions come through. No? All right. Well, thank you so much, Nancy. I really appreciate you spending your Saturday morning with us, or it's actually almost afternoon for you.
Not by much, no. Thank you, and I wish you all the best. I'm sure we're going to learn from you. I think that you will do great things, and maybe we'll pick up our next iteration from some tips from you guys.
We will aim for that.
Okay, thanks again.
Thanks. Have a great day.
You too. Bye.
All right, I'm going to kick her out. There we go. I ejected her. All right, so that sums up, or that rounds up our formal presentations for the day. I did want to take a moment to acknowledge our host sites. And I'm going to share with you a little bit of information about the sites, just to give them some extra kudos for taking the time to make this happen for us. So out in the White Mountains, we have the White Mountain Wildlife and Nature Center, which is a nonprofit whose mission is environmental education. Since their inception, they've had over 30,000 people attend various events, which includes teacher workshops, school activities, and their many Discovery Series events. They also have a publication called The Field Guide to Woodland Lake Park, 2 interpretive trails on site, and are a partner in the operation and maintenance of the Big Springs Environmental Study Area. In Tucson, we have the International Wildlife Museum, which is dedicated to increasing knowledge and appreciation of the diverse wildlife of the world, as well as explaining the role of wildlife management and conservation. Their programs include conservation science adventure programs, which are 1 to 5 day long camps focusing on wildlife conservation and outdoor recreation. They also have conservation science adventure school programs, which includes a guided tour of the museum and a lot more. I'm not going to read all of it. Guided tours of the museum focusing on conservation and sustainable use wildlife management, outreach to schools, and then they have lots of events that are around the concept of conservation and sustainable wildlife use management. We also have Yuma Crossing National Heritage Area. They are, well, in Yuma. And they have a lot of great programs, including the Colorado River Outreach Series, which has specific breakdowns for each grade level, and they also have another series of programs which includes eco-explorations, wetlands adaptations, water quality investigations, and wetlands restoration. And then our final location is right here, the Phoenix Zoo, which I guess I can boast about since it's my place. So we have a ton of EE programs starting from newborn to adults, from early learners to graduate students and beyond. And our work is to inspire and motivate people to live in ways that promote the well-being of the natural world and actively care for the natural world. And each year we have about 40,000 kids and adults that participate in our EE programs. I have some photos from each of the sites that I'll share with you as your inspiration moment before we move on to discussions. But before I do that, I wanted to invite Jeff Spellman from Be Outdoors Arizona up to the podium. He's going to talk a little bit about the environmental education advocacy efforts that we need some help with, and NAAE is our guiding force for that. So, Jeff?
Well, thank you, Gabby, and it's a real pleasure to be here today and very exciting to be here. Every time I come back to this building, the zoo, it reminds me of when an awful lot of this got started here in Arizona. In 2006, Richard Liu first visited Arizona right here at the Phoenix Zoo. I think we had about 300 people attend his presentation that came out subsequent to the first book that he wrote, Last Child in the Woods, and then his second book, Nature Principle on Human Restoration and the End of Nature Deficit Disorder. How many people know about Richard Liu and his book? Lots of people in this room. So, you know, Richard, you know, is really the guy who wrote this book that started this sweeping movement across the country, this groundswell movement for families that wanted to reconnect their kids with nature. And Eric talked about it in his presentation. But this is an exciting time for us here. And I liken it to, you know, building freeways in our state. You know, for a long time in Arizona, Arizonans didn't think that we needed freeways. We thought it was our grid system and it was the best thing ever. The only thing we ever had was one freeway. So while we're playing catch up, when we're a little bit slow, we have an opportunity to learn from what everybody else does in these things. And now we're getting up to speed with our freeways, and you see that we have a very wonderful, very beautiful freeway system. And I think it's the same way with environmental literacy. It's not that there hasn't been a lot of great work done in the past, but now with all of this new national movement to reconnect kids with nature, this is the perfect timing to really be addressing this, because people on a broad base are interested in the issue of connecting kids with nature. I left some papers on your tables from the North American Association for Environmental Education, and I'm just going to briefly refer to some of those, and if you could just please take them with you, because really all of the information is there so that I don't have to talk about it a lot. Eric talked a little bit about Every Student Succeeds Act, which replaces No Child Left Behind, and this is momentous in a time when there has been so many years fighting for trying to get No Child Left Inside enacted. And of course, at the end of 2015, the act that was introduced in Congress earlier in the year became part of the Greater Education Act. So that wording that was No Child Left Inside, that was introduced as a standalone bill back in February, actually ended up getting adopted into Every Student Succeeds Act. And with that comes some funding. So, and that's kind of where the need for action comes, because now that we actually have this authorized in the federal legislation, there's a little bit of money for it, but not enough money for it. So in this you will see that basically what the No Child Left Inside portion of ESSA has done is authorize student enrichment activities, which is what we're talking about, getting kids out to all these wonderful programs that we have here in Arizona. And it authorizes up to $1.6 billion to be used from the federal government that would include environmental education and field days. So the problem is that in the president's budget, there's only $500 million that's been authorized for these programs. So $500 million across the nation is not going to go very darn far. So we need your help with that. Right now is a time when this is being discussed in Congress in terms of funding and authorizations for the next upcoming year. And we have had some good advocates in Arizona in Congress. Not a lot of them, but we've had some that have been really stalwart when it comes to supporting environmental education and our natural resources. And I think probably the number one is Congressman Raul Grijalva. Every year he has supported environmental education in Congress. And the other one who's been pretty supportive is Ed Pastor. One that we got just this last year to support us was Ann Kirkpatrick from District 1 in Northern Arizona. And the way we got her was just simply asking her, would you support this legislation? And we got her to sign on to the No Child Left Inside Act that was introduced in February, and of course then ultimately ended up getting approved. NAAEE is really the organization that's driving and giving us the direction on what we need to do as environmental educators to get the attention from Congress focused on this and to get the funding that we need. And so often what they tell us over and over and over again is that oftentimes the reason we don't have support from Congress is because we just don't ask them. So there's papers that are on your table. What I encourage you more than anything is to, if you are not signed up with NAAEE, that you really ought to get signed up, and there's information on here how to do that. They have now kind of reorganized their website in what they call EE Pro, and it's a website in an area in advocacy. So if you go onto their website, you do not have to be a member of NAAEE in order to participate in their advocacy work. They are really encouraging a broad base of organizations to get involved in this, and they welcome you to be part of it, whether you're a member or not. So if you do nothing else, go onto their website and sign up under the advocacy tab and just become a member in there. You don't have to pay for anything. Just sign up, and then you will get the notices from NAAEE, Brock Adler, and the people that are working with him that tell us what they need to do. And oftentimes it's very simple. They will send out very pointed messages and looking for somebody to talk to a specific member of Congress, make the ask. Right now we need to be making friends. Next week we thought we were going to have the sign-on letters with us today that we could share with you, but like everything, this stuff all happens, you know, at a moment's notice, and then it's like we need you to call like yesterday. So this is kind of what happens, so that's why you need to be connected to a group like NAAEE, because they will give us the information as quickly as it's available, and they'll tell us very pointedly what we need to do. And when you go on there, you will see the list of all the states, who has historically supported environmental education, which years they've supported it. And again, the point is, if you know somebody or you live in that congressional district, you're the person that they're going to listen to because you are their constituent. So when this stuff comes out from NAAEE, somebody put the website up there, just do it. And if you know somebody, just call their office and ask for the person who works with environmental education and just talk to them and tell them, you know, we need you to support this, or we need you to sign on to this letter right now. So my parting point is sign up for NAAEE, go into the advocacy tab, become a member of that section, and then take their lead from there. Okay, thank you. Yes.
I'm not as familiar with the No Child Left Inside Act policy necessarily, but is the money that is being asked for, is it through a grant only? Is that the plan?
We don't know exactly how it's going to flow down. There's going to be some listening sessions coming out of the Department of Education soon to kind of discuss how this is going to flow. But essentially what we expect to happen is for it to come from the federal government down to the State Department of Education, and then to be distributed through competitive grants. The NCLI part is likely to come through the Century 21 grant programs with schools, and schools would probably be the applicants for the money, but they are highly encouraged to be partners with other nonprofits, environmental education groups, and things like that. They get more leverage by doing that. So that's what we expect is going to happen, but we don't yet exactly have the formula and how that's going to happen here. So that's why it's important for us to kind of stay in tune to what this happens. It's literally unfolding right now, and the only things we know that they're expecting is that the money has to come down and be distributed somehow according to a plan that's developed in the state. And of course that's why we're here today, is to develop that plan. And it's great to have plans, but if you don't have money for it, it's a lot of times all for naught. So the money will help us, I think, overcome many barriers that we have to doing good environmental education. We've got so many wonderful organizations already doing a fantastic job, but connecting them with the needs and so forth, that's where we need that extra shot of money in there. So we don't know exactly how it's going to happen yet, but it's kind of stay tuned and stay in tune to NAAEE. They're the ones that will probably be the ones to tell us exactly how this is going to roll out.
I guess a critical question though, in the No Child Left Inside Act itself, it is not stipulating, I mean, it's actually money. So it is not stipulating if it's a federal grant, or is it saying it will be, like you're saying, given to the state departments, and state departments will then oversee and allocate?
What we have been told so far is that yes, it's going to come down to the states and then be administered through competitive grants within the states. So.
Is it stipulated as far as going to the 50 states?
There's some sort of a formula. I don't know what that formula is, but yes.
That's a big part of whether your legislators will endorse it.
Whether we're going to get enough of the money?
No, whether they're even going to stick their neck out to vote for it because of how it's allocated to the states.
Right.
How much power the states actually have.
That's a good question. That's a good point. Yeah. I think, what NAAE right now would have us do is just trying to have conversations with members of Congress about the importance of it. And then when it comes time for some sort of action, then at least maybe we already have some relationships with those members of Congress. And so, again, the ones that we already have are Grijalva, Pastor, and Kirkpatrick. If anybody else knows somebody that's friendly to environmental education, I would simply, at this point, have those conversations with them and tell them there are things happening in Arizona. We just want to be on board with you so that we can have further conversations when, when there's action required by Congress. So right now, it's kind of in that relationship building stage. Does that make any sense? A little bit.
Yeah. I just kind of the political underpinnings are. No politician is going to say to you they don't think environmental education is not important.
Right.
Whatever you're going to call it.
Mm-hmm.
But where it's going to come to the point where they're going to stick their neck out to vote for it or against it, a lot of it is going to be how much power do the states have, because they don't want it to be delegated by the feds. They want it to have more state control.
Right.
So you have to kind of feel the pulse of.
The only thing I pulled the fact sheet that NAAE went out. I don't know if it's the same one you have. Did you do a fact sheet or not?
All the briefing papers are there.
Environmental education is an enrichment activity called out as eligible for funding under a new $1.6 billion grant program that includes different programs and student health and safety programs. These funds are block granted to the state using the Title I formula. 95% of the state funds have been block granted to the local education agencies, also according to formula. LEA is receiving more than $30,000, must use at least 20% of the grant to support one or more of the enrichment activities, and at least 20% on one or more of the student safety programs. And there's more block grants for the environmental literacy program. According to the Title I formula, states award tentative grants to LEA schools and or community partners for after school activities. That's what we know right now.
So I just want to make sure if any of the other sites that you're catching all of this, the discussion has been basically how is it going to be distributed to the states and what kind of power will the states have because of in order to get representatives to want to, as you said, stick their necks out for this, they need to have some control over how it's going to be spent and how it's going to be managed. So we're still waiting for a little bit more detail on that as it's going to flush out. The documents that Jeff's been referencing, I will send those out via email, but you can download them from the NAAE website, which I saw a comment looks like it's currently down. So you were able to get on? Okay. So there might be some problems getting onto it, but we'll also post them on the Arizona EE website as well, so that you'll have access to them. And AAE will keep tabs on it too, and we'll send out information as we know more. And just be thinking about how you can reach out to your representatives and your Congress people, all of your Congress people, and we'll go from there.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. All right. So at this point, I just want to see if there's any last questions from any of our other sites. White Mountains, Yuma, or Tucson. You can go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question. All right, so in a few moments, I'm going to shut down the broadcast and let everybody go into their discussion groups. Here in Phoenix, we have copies of the 4 state plans that we're asked you to take a look at. For the folks out not in Phoenix, if you don't have copies of them, if you go to the ArizonaEE.org website, go to Engage, and then go to Environmental Literacy, you'll see the plans posted on our website there, so you'll be able to access them if you'd like to refer to them. So we're hoping to use those plans as just a guide to get feedback on what elements we think should be included or not included in a plan, as well as some other questions that we have for you. So with that, I'm going to leave you with some fun photos of environmental education in action. thank everybody for